Sarah Mitchell, and I was supposed to be the heir to the Mitchell publishing empire, a business my grandfather built from nothing into a $500 million company. But I chose a different path, one that would eventually change everything. I still remember that fateful dinner 10 years ago. The crystal chandelier cast elegant shadows across our dining room table as my father, James Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Publishing, stared at me in disbelief. My mother, Elizabeth, gripped her wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. A teacher. My father's voice was dangerously quiet. You want to throw away your business degree, your inheritance, everything we've built, to become a teacher. I sat straighter in my chair, fighting to keep my voice steady. Yes, I've already accepted a position at Riverside Elementary School. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my father laughed, a cold, harsh sound that made me flinch. This is ridiculous. You're just going through a phase. You'll come to your senses. It's not a phase, Dad. This is what I want to do with my life. I want to make a difference in children's lives, not just chase profit margins. My mother set down her wine glass with a sharp clink. Sarah, darling, be reasonable. You're our only child. The company needs you. Your father needs you. The company needs someone who's passionate about publishing, I countered. That's not me. It never has been. My father's face darkened. I've spent 30 years building this company, expanding what your grandfather started. I didn't do all this just to watch you throw it away for some childish fantasy of teaching finger painting. Dad, He slammed his fist on the table, making the silverware jump. No, I won't allow it. You will take your place at Mitchell Publishing. Or what? I challenged, though my heart was pounding. Or you're no longer part of this family. My mother gasped. James, I mean it, he continued, his voice like steel. If you walk away from this company, you walk away from everything. Your trust fund, your inheritance, this house, all of it. You'll be dead to us. I looked at my mother, hoping for support, but she just stared at her plate, shoulders trembling slightly. The weight of the moment pressed down on me like a physical force. Everything I'd ever known, my entire life of privilege and security, balanced against my dreams. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Then I guess I'm dead to you. Sarah, please, my mother whispered, but I was already walking away. That night, I packed what I could into my car, some clothes, my laptop, and a few precious photos. The trust fund would be gone by morning, I knew. My father never made idle threats. I had $5,000 in my personal account, barely enough for first and last month's rent on a tiny apartment. As I drove away from the mansion I'd called home for 24 years, tears blurred my vision. But beneath the grief and fear, there was something else, determination. I would prove them wrong. I would show them that success wasn't just measured in dollar signs and profit margins. My first apartment was a studio in a rundown building on the east side of town. The roof leaked when it rained, the neighbors fought constantly, and the heating barely worked in winter. But it was mine, earned with my own money from my teaching salary. Those first few months were harder than anything I'd ever experienced. I went from designer clothes to thrift store finds, from 5-star restaurants to ramen noodles. Every penny was counted, every purchase carefully considered. But standing in front of my first class of third graders, seeing their eager faces and bright eyes, I knew I'd made the right choice. I threw myself into teaching with everything I had. While my father worked late into the night making million-dollar deals, I stayed up planning lessons that would engage my students. While my mother attended charity galas, I used my own money to buy supplies for kids who couldn't afford them. Years passed. I heard snippets about my family through mutual acquaintances. Mitchell Publishing continued to grow. My father's picture appeared in business magazines. My mother's social calendar remained full. They had effectively erased me from their lives, just as promised. But I was building something too, something they couldn't understand. I developed innovative teaching methods that helped struggling readers catch up to their grade level. I started an after-school program for kids whose parents worked late. I pursued my master's degree in education at night, determined to become the best teacher I could be. Then I met Dr. Marcus Chen, a brilliant education researcher who visited our school to study successful teaching practices. He observed my classroom for a week, taking copious notes and recording my lessons. "Your methods are remarkable," he told me one afternoon as my students filed out. "The way you combine storytelling with phonics instruction, I've never seen anything quite like it." I shrugged, embarrassed by the praise. "I just do whatever works for my kids." "Have you ever thought about developing this into a formal curriculum? Something that could help teachers everywhere?" I hadn't, but the idea took root. Over the next year, working with Dr. Chen, I documented everything I'd learned about teaching reading. We conducted research studies, gathered data, refined the methods. The results were extraordinary. Students using my curriculum advanced an average of 2 grade levels in reading within 1 year. Education companies started calling. Publishers wanted to distribute the curriculum nationwide. Speaking invitations arrived from teaching conferences. Suddenly, the girl who'd walked away from a publishing empire was building something of her own. I called it Read Right, a comprehensive literacy program that combined traditional phonics with storytelling and emotional engagement. Within 2 years, it was being used in schools across the country. The royalties started small, but grew steadily. I used the money to create a foundation that provided free books and teaching materials to underfunded schools. I never sought publicity, preferring to focus on my classroom and my students. But one day, a journalist from the local paper wrote a feature about Read Right and its creator, the former Harris who'd chosen teaching over wealth. The story went viral. That's when everything changed, because that's when Mitchell Publishing started losing everything. I didn't know it then, but my father's company was already in trouble. The publishing industry had been changing rapidly, and Mitchell Publishing had failed to adapt. E-books, digital platforms, and new media were reshaping the landscape, but my father stubbornly clung to traditional methods. The first signs were small: budget cuts, layoffs, canceled contracts. Then bigger problems emerged: failed investments, mounting debt, plummeting stock prices. The empire my grandfather had built and my father had expanded was crumbling. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, as I was packing up my classroom for the day, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was my mother. "Sarah, please. We need to talk. Your father, the company, everything's falling apart. Please call me." I stared at the message for a long time, my hands shaking slightly. 10 years of silence. And now this. Part of me wanted to delete the message, to maintain the wall they built. But another part remembered the little girl who'd once adored her father, who'd sat on his lap in his big office and played with his fancy fountain pens. Before I could decide what to do, another text arrived. This one made my blood run cold. "The bank is foreclosing on the house. We have nowhere to go." I sat in my classroom long after the last student had left, staring at those 2 text messages from my mother. The silence felt heavy, broken only by the soft patter of rain against the windows. 10 years of complete silence, and now this. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled up a news article on my phone. The headline made my stomach clench. Mitchell Publishing faces bankruptcy. Industry giant falls. The article detailed everything: failed investments, massive layoffs, plummeting stock prices, and mounting debt. The company my grandfather had built from nothing was now worth almost nothing. Another text from my mother. "Please, Sarah, we need you." Need. The word felt bitter in my mind. They needed me now, but where were they when I needed them? When I was eating ramen noodles for dinner in my leaky apartment. When I cried myself to sleep those first few months, missing my family so much it physically hurt. I gathered my things and headed home to my modest but comfortable house, bought with my read-write royalties, not family money. As I made dinner, my phone kept buzzing with more messages from my mother. "The bank is taking everything. Your father isn't well. Please just talk to us." Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I picked up the phone and dialed the number. My mother answered on the first ring. "Sarah?" Her voice cracked. "Oh, thank God." "What do you want, Mom?" We need help. The company, the house, everything. It's all gone. The banks are taking everything. Your father, he's not handling it well. We don't have anywhere to go." I closed my eyes, fighting back the surge of emotions. "And now you want my help? After 10 years of pretending I don't exist?" "I know we hurt you," she whispered. "We were wrong. So wrong. But please, Sarah, we're your parents. Are we done?" My father's voice suddenly came through, gruff and distant. He must have been listening on speakerphone. "James," my mother hissed, "don't." "No, Elizabeth. If she's going to gloat, let her gloat. Go ahead, Sarah. Tell us how we deserve this. Tell us how karma finally caught up with us." His words sparked something in me. Not anger, exactly, but a deep, aching sadness. "Is that what you think of me, Dad? That I'd enjoy seeing you suffer?" Silence. "I never wanted this," I continued. "I just wanted to teach, to make a difference in children's lives. Why wasn't that enough for you?" "Because it was beneath you," he exploded. "A Mitchell, teaching elementary school. We had bigger plans for you." "Your plans?" I corrected him. "Not mine. Never mine." More silence. Then my mother's voice again, small and desperate. "Sarah, please. We have nowhere else to turn." I took a deep breath. "Come to my house tomorrow at noon. We'll talk." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. I thought about my grandfather, who started Mitchell Publishing with nothing but a used printing press and a dream. I thought about my father, who expanded that dream into an empire. And I thought about myself, the hare who chose a different path entirely. The next day, exactly at noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents standing there, and the sight of them shocked me. My father, once the picture of corporate success in his expensive suits, wore wrinkled chackies and an old polo shirt. My mother's designer clothes had been replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. They looked older, smaller somehow. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They entered hesitantly, looking around my home with a mixture of curiosity and something else. Was it shame? The house wasn't fancy by their standards, but it was warm and welcoming, filled with books and student artwork and comfortable furniture. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked, falling back on politeness to ease the tension. They nodded, and I led them to the kitchen. As I prepared the coffee, I could feel their eyes on me, taking in every detail of my life that they'd missed. "Your house is nice," my mother offered. "It's mine," I replied simply, "paid for with my own money." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Sarah, about the company." "I know." I cut him off. "I've read the news. The digital revolution caught up with you, didn't it?" He flinched. "We thought print would always have its place. We didn't see the changes coming fast enough. And when we finally tried to adapt," he spread his hands helplessly. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked, placing their coffee cups on the table. My mother reached for her purse and pulled out a thick folder. "We've been following your success with Read Write. It's extraordinary what you've built." I almost laughed at the irony. "Now you think it's extraordinary. 10 years ago, you thought teaching was beneath me." "We were wrong," my father said, the words seeming to cost him physically. "About everything. About you." My mother opened the folder, revealing financial documents and contracts. Mitchell Publishing still has some valuable assets: the infrastructure, the distribution networks, the relationships with authors and retailers. With the right digital strategy. I held up my hand. "Stop. Just stop. Are you actually here to ask me to save the company?" They exchanged glances. "We thought," my father said carefully, "given your success with educational publishing, maybe I'd want to swoop in and rescue the family business. The same business you threw me out of." "Sarah," my mother pleaded, "we know we don't deserve your help. But this isn't just about us. There are hundreds of employees who will lose their jobs, authors who depend on us, your grandfather's legacy." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't you dare use Grandpa against me. He built that company from nothing. He understood the value of hard work, of following your passion. He would have supported my choice to teach." My father's face darkened. "You don't know that." "Actually, I do." I stood and walked to my home office, returning with a framed letter. "He wrote this to me just before he died, when I was still in college. I never showed it to you." I handed the letter to my father, watching as he read it, my mother peering over his shoulder. I knew the words by heart. "My dearest Sarah, your father tells me you're struggling with your future, torn between the company and your dream of teaching. Let me tell you something. I didn't build Mitchell Publishing because I wanted to be rich. I built it because I loved books, loved the way they could change lives and open minds. If teaching is your passion, if that's how you want to change lives, then follow that path with all your heart. Success isn't measured by the size of your bank account, but by the lives you touch. All my love, Grandpa." My father's hands trembled as he lowered the letter. He never said, "You never asked," I replied quietly. "You were too busy building your empire to notice it was crushing me." My mother wiped tears from her eyes. "We've made so many mistakes, Sarah. With the company, with you, everything." I took the letter back, carefully returning it to its frame. "Yes, you did. And now you want me to fix them." "We don't deserve your help," my father admitted. "But those employees, their families." I looked at my parents. Really looked at them. The arrogance was gone, replaced by genuine desperation and perhaps a glimmer of understanding. They had lost everything that they thought mattered, only to realize too late what really did matter. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "Not for you, but for Grandpa's legacy and for those employees. Send me the complete financial records and current contracts. I'll have my team look them over. My father's head snapped up. Your team? I allowed myself a small smile. Did you think Read-Write runs itself? I have a full staff of educational publishers, curriculum developers, and digital content specialists. We're not just selling books, Dad. We're changing how children learn to read. For the first time, I saw something new in my father's eyes as he looked at me. Respect. After they left, I sat in my home office, looking at the wall of thank you letters from students, teachers, and parents whose lives had been touched by Read-Write. Next to them hung my first paycheck as a teacher, framed as a reminder of where I started. I picked up my phone and called Marcus Chin, my business partner and the brilliant researcher who had helped me develop Read-Write. Marcus, remember how we talked about expanding into traditional publishing? I think I have an opportunity for us. How do you feel about saving a century-old publishing house? Mitchell Publishing? He asked. Are you sure about this, Sarah? I looked at my grandfather's letter, then at a recent photo of my third-grade class. Yes, I said firmly, but we're going to do it my way. The Mitchell Publishing headquarters looked exactly as I remembered it, a towering glass and steel monument to my family's legacy. But now, walking through the revolving doors as CEO of Read-Write Educational Publishing, it felt different. I wasn't here as the prodigal daughter returning to take her predetermined place. I was here as a successful businesswoman, ready to negotiate on my own terms. The boardroom fell silent as I entered, followed by my team from Read-Write. My father sat at the far end of the table, looking small in his once powerful chair. The board members, mostly old friends of his who'd watched me grow up, shifted uncomfortably. Good morning, I said, taking my seat. Let's begin. For the next 2 hours, we went through the details of Mitchell Publishing's situation. The numbers were worse than I'd imagined. The company wasn't just failing, it was hemorrhaging money. Traditional print sales had plummeted, digital initiatives had faltered, and attempts to enter the e-book market had come too late. As you can see, my father concluded, his voice heavy, we need immediate intervention to save the company. I opened my laptop and pulled up a presentation. I've reviewed everything, and I have a proposal. Read-Write is prepared to acquire Mitchell Publishing. Murmurs rippled through the room. My father's face paled. However, I continued, this won't be a simple bailout. We're going to completely restructure the company. I laid out my vision. Mitchell Publishing would be divided into 2 divisions. The first would focus on educational publishing, merging with Read-Write's existing operations. The second would handle general publishing, but with a completely new digital-first approach. This means significant changes, I explained. We'll need to cut executive salaries, eliminate redundant positions, and invest heavily in technology. Some of you won't like these changes. Some of you won't survive them. You can't just come in here and... One board member began, but I cut him off. Actually, I can. You have 2 choices. Accept our offer or file for bankruptcy. Those are your only options. My father spoke up, his voice quiet. And what about current management? I met his eyes. All executive positions will be re-evaluated, including yours, Dad. The room erupted in protests, but I held up my hand. This isn't personal. This is business. Isn't that what you always taught me, Dad? He flinched at having his own words used against him, but said nothing. I'll give you 1 hour to discuss the proposal, I said, standing. But remember, the alternative is losing everything. In the hallway, Marcus squeezed my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. They'll take the deal. They have no choice. And they did. By the end of the day, the preliminary paperwork was signed. Read-Write would acquire Mitchell Publishing, saving the company but transforming it completely. As I packed up my things, my father appeared in the doorway. You've grown. Formidable, he said quietly. I learned from you, Dad, just not in the way you intended. He stepped into the office, looking around at the space that had once been his. I spent so many years in here, thinking I was building something great. I never realized I was destroying something even more important. Our relationship, I said. He nodded. I was so focused on the company, on maintaining the Mitchell legacy, that I couldn't see you were creating your own legacy, one that might be even more meaningful than mine. I thought about my students, about the millions of children learning to read through Read-Write's programs. Different? I corrected him. Not better or worse, just different. He moved to the window, staring out at the city skyline. Your grandfather would be proud of you. Not because you're saving the company, but because you followed your heart. He'd be proud of you too, Dad. If you can learn from this, it's not too late. He turned to face me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Will you teach me? How to start over? Something broke inside me, the last wall I'd built around my heart after all these years. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I will. The transformation of Mitchell Publishing wasn't easy. Over the next year, we weathered protests from old guard executives, resistance to digital changes, and the pain of necessary layoffs. But we also hired young, innovative employees, launched successful digital platforms, and expanded our educational publishing reach globally. My father stepped down as CEO, but took on a new role, mentoring young authors and editors. He found, to his surprise, that he loved working directly with creative people instead of just managing spreadsheets. My mother, after some soul-searching, started a literacy program for adults, using Read-Write's methods to help parents learn alongside their children. 1 year after the acquisition, I stood in my third-grade classroom, teaching my regular morning lessons. I had refused to give up teaching completely, though I now only taught part-time. A knock at the door interrupted our reading circle. It was my father. Sorry to interrupt, he said, smiling at my students. I'm here for Career Day. The children looked up excitedly. We've been preparing for Career Day for weeks, with parents coming in to talk about their jobs. I hadn't expected my father to volunteer. Class, this is my dad, I said. He works in publishing, helping people tell their stories. My father sat down in our reading circle, looking somewhat out of place in his business casual clothes among the tiny chairs and colorful rugs. But as he began to talk about the magic of books, about how stories can change lives, I saw something wonderful happen. The corporate executive disappeared, replaced by a man who remembered why he'd fallen in love with publishing in the first place. But you know what? He said to my wide-eyed students. The most important stories aren't always in books. Sometimes they're in here. He tapped his heart, like the story of a brave teacher who taught me that success isn't about how much money you make, but about how many lives you touch. He looked at me as he said this, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Later that day, as we had coffee in my classroom during break, he asked, "Do you ever regret walking away from the company all those years ago?" I looked around my classroom at the student artwork on the walls, the books in our reading corner, the small awards Read-Write had won for educational innovation. No, I said honestly. I regret that it broke our family apart for so long, but I don't regret following my heart. Look what it led to. Not just success, but meaning. Purpose. He nodded, understanding finally filling his eyes. You know, when you first said you wanted to be a teacher, I thought you were choosing a smaller life. I was wrong. You chose a bigger one, big enough to include both teaching and business, both your dreams and your heritage. And big enough to include forgiveness, I added softly. That evening, I had dinner with my parents in their new home, a modest but comfortable house, bought with my father's salary from his new position. As we sat in their kitchen, sharing a simple meal and talking about both business and family, I realized something profound. 10 years ago, I thought I had to choose between my family's vision of success and my own. But life had taught me a different lesson. Sometimes the greatest success comes not from choosing one path over another, but from building bridges between different paths. My grandfather's letter hung framed in my office at both Readwright and Mitchell Publishing, a reminder of his wisdom. Success isn't measured by the size of your bank account, but by the lives you touch. By following that wisdom, I hadn't just saved my family's company. I had saved my family itself. The next morning, I stood before my class of third graders, teaching them about storytelling and grammar. On my desk sat acquisition reports and publishing contracts waiting for my review. And in my heart lived the certainty that I had finally found my own definition of success, one that encompassed both the teacher and the businesswoman, both the daughter and the leader, both the past and the future. Sometimes, being disowned by your family